can you take me back to when swimming was introduced to you and when it became part of your life?
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. My first memory of swimming was, I don't know, I was probably 10, 11, 12, and I grew up in Dearborn. Dearborn had a great recreation department. They had community pools all over the place, and I started going to Level Good Pool, and I can remember swimming there, and that was the first time I noticed I was a natural at backstroke. But it was, that was just fun. We were playing around. It wasn't really competitive, although I think we had some meets. It wasn't until I was probably 14 before I joined a swim club, and it was the Dearborn Mustangs. And we worked out maybe 3 times a week, probably twice a week. It was very low key, but I started going to AAU age group meets. Found that I was competitive, and didn't know there was more than that. Didn't know that it was, Tommy and Jeff Longstreth at Patton Pool and these other big programs, and I just had fun with it, and swam in junior high school at Bryant Junior High in Dearborn, and did pretty well there. And it was, I think that winter, I got invited by Doug Bell, who's a year older than I was, to go to Patton Pool one Sunday to work out. And I got there, and all I can remember is that it must have been a million kids in that pool. It was just white water churning, and Jeff Longstreth was on the deck running the practice, and I was then doing circle groups, and I was doing open turns. That's how naive and inexperienced I was at that point in time. And he was screaming at us, "You got to do flip turns every turn." And I was going, "Who is this guy?" And then, that passed, and then about, I finished my 9th grade year at Bryant, and then beginning late summer, beginning of the fall, I got invited to come work out with this group in the mornings at Dearborn High. And Tommy had transferred from Sacred Heart. So the 10th grade, he was at Dearborn High. He couldn't compete until January of that year. But Jeff started running practices in the morning. So we were getting there at 6 in the morning, 2.5-hour practices. And then we had the afternoon practices as part of the high school, but it was still Jeff and Jack Dunworth, and Jack Johnson was the actual high school coach. And it was then that I really got introduced to the sport. We were going anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000 yards a day working out. It became a vocation as opposed to something that was just pure fun and recreation. And I got good fast, and that happened to a lot of us. I'm sure Tommy talked about our team in 72, even 73. Where we had a lot of guys who were just sort of good swimmers, but got pulled into this program and became very good. And so that's why I said before, I owe everything to Jeff and to Tommy. If Tom hadn't transferred over from Sacred Heart to Dearborn High, none of this would have happened. But we just got into a program. There were a group of us that bought into this program. At the time, it was very intense. We gave up a lot for it, but it was fun to win.
It sounds like an amazing time in your life, and we're going to delve into it here. You talked about starting to get a sense that you had a natural kind of affinity to the backstroke, and that you were good on your back. Do you have a memory of, I'm always interested in those kind of breakthrough moments and understanding as a swimmer when they start to realize that maybe they have a chance to be different. And for some people, that breakthrough moment happens very young, and in other cases it happens older. And in just one answer in exchange here with you, you pick up the extreme difference in your story versus many of the others that I'm going to tell, of swimmers that might have been ranked among the top 16 swimmers in the country when they were 10 years old, kids that were setting national records at 10 years old. And we start your story at 13, 14 years old and transitioning through junior high into a high school program. So let me ask you, you know, as a starting point, did you feel like for a period of time that you were coming from behind, that you were playing catch up?
Oh yeah, I always did. It always amazed me the number of people at the programs I were in who were an age group for their whole life. And I've swum with kids who were national age group champions. And I also appreciated the fact that maybe it was good I started late, because I swam with a lot of kids who were burned out by the time they were in high school and in college, who had been, you know, at 13 had been a national age group champion, and now they were still good, but they never progressed. So, you know, I don't know what would have happened if I was one of them. I think it would have, you know, I wish I had started earlier. I wish I'd gotten into a more intense program earlier, but it is what it is. I mean, the other issue we had in Michigan is we're in Michigan. You can't even get outside to train until June, and then it's still cold. And, you know, in Dearborn, we had no 50-meter pools. You know, my first long course season was in the summer of 1970, and that was a big difference. I really, personally, I preferred training long course and competing long course. But to answer your question, I think the first time I realized that I could be good is, you know, that sophomore year in high school. I started putting down times that were the best in the state. So, you know, Detroit News would run the best times for each event every week in the paper, and I was always near the top. And I think it was the Detroit Invitational, or the Detroit News Invitational that year that I won that. I beat Steve Kuzma and touched him out. He ended up winning the state championship that year, and I was runner-up. That was the only backstroke race I lost in high school, my whole 3 years. So as I started doing that, and I qualified for the regional AAU championships, I qualified for the nationals. You know, when that started to happen, I realized, hey, there's something here. I really want to pursue this. But that's the way the program was. The program was always about continually setting goals. And unfortunately for myself, it meant I was never satisfied with what I did, because I was always looking to do better.
It's a remarkable ascension that you go through in what really is about 2 years, 3 years, right? From a non-swimmer to in a realistic conversation among the top 20, 25 backstrokers in America.
Yeah, it was 2 years to the Olympic trials in '72. And I was, I think I was seeded 13th, ended up finishing, I think 15th that year. But yeah, I made consolation finals in 3 national championships. Yeah, it was, and that's where I get to, if I'd had maybe, you know, 2 more years or 3 more years of this program and gotten to that point, I'm sure I would have been better. And that leads to some dissatisfaction with my career, and that I think I left a lot on the table.
It's an interesting debate, you know, like you could go back and replay those things, but I also see in many ways in my research, not telling you anything you don't know, there's a lot of stories of people that are peaking or showing their best nationally at 11, 12 to 14 years old. And while that's special in their life lessons and things that you take forward, I think we'd all agree you'd rather peak nationally at a little bit older age. And so if you were fueled at 16, 17 years old in a way because the sport was fresh and new to you at that time in your life, when you had a chance to train with a guy like Szuba, instead of maybe being burned out a little bit over things that had gone on over 6, 7, 8 years of it, who knows, you know, like it's a different, you hit the sport running at a time that was amazing, that, you know, in your high school and in that area. let me continue to kind of set the scene. We'll get to 71 and 72, which are huge years for you, but I want to talk to you more about what swimming was like at that time, and like, I'm interested in everyone's personal experience, but when I've asked this question of some others, I've heard things talked, obviously the goggles are a big thing. Even the presence of like consistent like lane lines in practice, and use of interval training, and when those things are introduced at different times, and whatnot. So I'm interested in hearing you talk a little bit about what it was like to be a young swimmer in the early 1970s, what it looked like and what it was like.
Yeah, it was a lot different than now. We worked out, Dearborn High School had this indoor pool. It had very little lighting, and it was a flush deck pool. It was very choppy. We did have good lane lines, but I can remember having these big wooden just blocks, the starting blocks, and we swam, 4 or 5 guys per lane in circle groups. We had, in the afternoon, the diving team had to practice, and the diving board was over the pool, and they would be diving while we were working out. I remember a couple times I wanted to get out and punch one of the divers because I hit my hand on the board because they depressed it when I was swimming underneath it. But it was a rat race. It wasn't. There weren't any real perks. I never wore goggles. I think I tried to, but just couldn't do it backstroke wise. Nobody wore caps back then. There was no cross training. We had no weight program. We had none of that. It was just got in the pool and you ground it out. And especially in 72, leading up to Olympic trials, most of the country was overtraining. People were going as much as 10,000 meters a day. And there's none of what people do now in terms of a lot of these 25 or 50 or 75 different strokes. You just went in and ground it out. And we did a lot of interval training. We did a lot of sets of 200s, 400s, 100s. Cut down on the rest a lot so that we were always constantly churning. And that's why I did well in swimming. I think I had some natural talent, but I was a grinder. I enjoyed the work. I just enjoyed how I felt at the end of it. If you talk to me at the time, there were times that you work out so hard and you literally have no life. So you go in the morning, work out for a couple hours, go to school, after school work out, go home, do homework for 3 hours, go to bed, get up 5 o'clock the next morning, and that went on for a long time. So it was a huge sacrifice, but the few of us that did that, we got rewards out of it. I'm glad I did it.